We asked Saskatchewan what they know about 5G.
More speed, more innovation.
It's gonna make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier.
This is what 5G looks like.
Better, faster.
Sounds like one more G. Sounds pretty good.
I don't know what it means.
All you really need to know is the future of 5G is here and will continue improving through investments in network technology.
Welcome to Martensville, Saskatchewan, site of the curling stadium, Martensville International. It's playoff Monday and we're into the semifinal round this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jason Cheng, and with me is 2019 Canadian and World Junior Champion, Mr. Probability himself, Matt Hall.
I'm back again. Thanks for having me. It should be a great matchup we're looking at here.
Well, this is the semifinal round, both the women's semifinals and the men's semifinals happening simultaneously. You can watch all the streams from Curling Stadium. Just go to Curling Zone on YouTube or curlingzone.com and click on those links. If you're joining us from CBC Sports Online, welcome as well. Well, our feature match here, Matt, is Mike McEwen playing against Yannick Schwaller, the number 2 seed going into the playoffs. That's Team Schwaller from Switzerland. Number 5 going in, Mike McEwen. Sorry, number 3, Mike McEwen.
Yeah, and I think we should have a very good fight here. These two skips are quite familiar with each other. They've played against each other 3 times in the past 4 years. Mike McEwen has a 2-1 record, but this Schwaller team is actually probably more well known to most of the people watching here in Canada as the former Peter de Cruz. 2 of them stepping back, so Yannick Schwaller comes in at the skip position and Pablo Lachat takes on the lead roles. But Mike McEwen and Peter de Cruz also played each other a total of 15 times in their career, with Mike having a slight 8-7 edge there. So a bunch of players that are very familiar against each other, and I think it won't take long for them to really duke it out.
Well, very evenly matched based on historical records. As you mentioned, the skip for the Swiss team is Yannick Schwaller. They're number 16 in the world. Benoit Schwartz, he throws the 4th stones. Sven Michel at 2nd, and as you mentioned, Pablo Lachat, their new lead. They did not meet each other during the preliminary round. Both teams going 4-1 and into the playoffs. Matt, we have a new look Mike McEwen team this year. We're used to seeing him playing out of Manitoba all these years. He's going to be out of Ontario this season.
Yeah, so he's made the jump 1 province east. He's backed up by lead Brent Lang, 2nd Jonathan Butte, and 3rd Ryan Fry. Brent Lang and Ryan Fry both coming over from the Epping squads last year out of Ontario, and Jonathan Butte played with Tanner Horkin last year, and a lot of people at home might know him as from playing with Scott McDonald a few years ago. They were the Ontario champions, represented Ontario at the Brier.
Yeah, and as mentioned, both teams, they came through the preliminary round with the 4-1 record, but due to draw shot challenge, Team Schwaller, they have hammer in the first end.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. We talk about how important the hammer is. For someone like Colton Flash, who went through the round robin undefeated, he's quite happy because he's going to have the hammer automatically. But for these 2 teams hoping to sort of fight their way through, you have to try and get that big advantage. It's about a 60 to 65% chance advantage starting with the hammer with 2 top men's teams. So really important that they got it done, and McEwen was able to do it.
Well, lots of rocks already in play, Matt. But just to keep everyone up to date, there are 3 other semifinal matches going on. Colton Flash, he went 5-0, top seed on the men's side, playing against number 5 seed Riku Yanagisawa of Japan. He went through the round robin at 3-2 and actually had to play a quarterfinal match earlier this morning, defeating Steve Laycock 6-4 on the strength of a 4-under in the 6th end. And on the ladies' side, Silvana Terranzoni playing against Chelsea Carey. Chelsea came through a quarterfinal this morning as well, defeating the local team from Saskatchewan, Nancy Martin, 7-4. She had a big steal of 2 in the 7th that took her home. And Team Unjigim from Korea playing against Clancy Grandy, now out of BC. And Clancy Grandy, she had a rematch with Jennifer Jones. They played last night in the last preliminary round draw. Jones took that one last night, but earlier this morning, Grandy defeating Jones to make her way into the semifinal.
And we just saw a flash here by the McEwen team. We'll get to that. But as I look over, as you're talking about the different scores, that Silvana team, they must have gotten through practice pretty early pretty quickly, because they're already in the second end. Silvana with a 3-0 lead over Chelsea Carey.
Yeah, quick start there for Silvana Tirinzoni. She did go in as the number 1 seed on the ladies' side. No one went undefeated. 4-1 was Tirinzoni, as well as Unji Kim and Clancy Grandy. Nancy Martin also at 4-1. And Jones and Carey, they snuck in at 3-2, avoided a mess at 2-3 by winning their final preliminary round games last night.
Now looking at this game, Schwaller wasting no time capitalizing on the mistake by Mike McEwen's second, John Buke, on his first stone, slipping just past that rock on the button. Schwaller comes right down, locks another blue stone in there, and it's going to take some work to get that out.
Runs it back, jams it straight on, leaves the center guard there.
Definitely would have liked to get maybe a bit more motion there in the forefoot. Unfortunately, just jams it. Rolls to basically frozen on that red. One of the good things, it does expose that shot stone on the button. So Mike, if he ever gets the opportunity to remove that, may be able to roll somewhere nice to sit to. But I'm sure if you're Benoit Schwartz, you're not really interested in giving him that opportunity to do that. So probably just going to guard this up for the time being. Of course, Yannick Schwaller is the skip on this team, but Benoit, of course, the longtime fourth rock thrower for Peter de Cruz. They decided to stay with that lineup, so Yannick does throw the third stones.
So you're suggesting a guard probably want to wrap a piece behind that red guard, right?
You would like to, I think. I think if you're going to do that, you probably want to come down right onto the blue that's in the top 8, so that you still choke off that blue stone on the button. I think if you ended up throwing like a halfway guard and tucked a piece, there might be some room for Mike to get around and do something with that stone on the button. So this is coming in maybe a little bit tighter, and I think that ends up in a very good spot. Just tucks a piece so there's no easy runbacks for Mike, and deep enough so that he can't wrap one around and do something with that shot stone. Like they're taking a look at probably the double peel. Of course, those 2 rocks on the center line are Mike McEwen's biggest issue. So if he can get both of those moving, even if he runs it into the blue that's frozen to the red, just gets stuff moving out of the way, that's probably a better scenario than the one they find themselves in right now.
See McEwen playing the red stones. They do have a red stone in the ring, second shot stone, but shot stone belongs to Team Schwaller. Yannick, they've been kind of the number 2 ranked team over the past quadrennial to that Peter de Cruz rank, and now, of course, Schwaller hooking up with Benoit Schwartz.
And we saw Yannick's former teammates here this weekend, the Michael Brunner squad. They had a pretty good start to the weekend, but just faltered a little bit. Were unable to qualify for the playoffs.
Gets a bunch of those guards moving. Of course, couldn't move the shooter out of the way. It was hard for the shooter to roll over to get that much action on the other guards.
Yeah, I think he wanted to hit that maybe a bit thinner and over the top. At least I think it was more important to get everything off the center line. If you left that corner guard there, I'm not entirely convinced Mike would be all that worried about it. But as it is, he leaves the shooter there. It is his color, so guess he could run it back. Although with that angle on the blue-red, there's not a lot of good prospects here for Mike at the moment. What is good for him, though, is that he will always have both sides to score. He could always throw a wide out-turn draw, grab full forefoot for his 1 point, and if that ends up being blocked by Yannick Schwaller, you could also throw the in-turn and maybe just chip that red stone in. You don't have to move it a whole lot to score.
I'm going to replace the guard here, I think. About the similar spot as the last one. Try to touch. That doesn't quite touch the center line, but I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think it does the job. Only thing about leaving it out there is it does leave this run back. You hit it on the nose, you can pick out the shot stone and leave 2 red guards up defending that blue-red combination. Of course, it does come with some risk if you play that. If you ever hit it a little bit on the high side, you could run it into that blue-red combination, and worst case scenario, leave Yannick sitting 3. So they do have to be careful, and I think that's why Mike is now discussing the option of just going for the double peel. If you sort of get rid of all the guards, it's difficult for Yannick to guard everything.
Certainly taking their time with this call. I agree with you. It is an important decision here. There is some risk to running this in. I think that's what they're trying to do, though. Straight back. It is on an angle. I don't think this is good. That's the miss that you were worried about, Matt.
Yeah, and just really bad luck to... It's just unfortunate that they did that, but really bad luck that it stuck around behind that guard. These prospects are looking very bleak for Mike early on here in this end. Might still be the opportunity to run that stone back on Mike's first to get stuff moving, and there is still room to draw. So it's not all over for Mike at the moment, but definitely with their backs against the wall here in the first end.
Yeah, you can see from that overhead shot, the blue rock about 2/3 into the forefoot, so you can catch a bit more than the forefoot. If nothing else changes in this end, Mike McEwen can still draw for the 1, but would be drawing under a lot of pressure.
There actually was a correction in the score. It was actually a 4 for Silvana Tiranzoni in the first end against Chelsea Carey, so she leads 4-0 in the second end. We also saw a steal of 1 by Clancy Grandy against Team Unchi Kim in the other women's semi. So already the women are maybe showing up the men out there, making it quite exciting for the fans, I think. Flash and Yannick was still in the first end with many rocks in play.
I think they've decided to play a guard. I think they wanted to just touch the center line. Wrap it a little bit behind that red guard, touching the center line, and that is almost as good as they called it.
Yeah, would have liked to see them try and get that maybe another inch to sit in the rings, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. That's something that Mike's going to be able to outdraw, whether they're sitting 3 or 4. It was more important to get that rock in the on the right line, and yeah, just tuck enough that no real easy runbacks here for Mike. I'm sure he'll give it a go, try and get stuff moving to open it up for himself, but it's not easy.
He's having a look at whether he can just hit the blue guard into the pile of rocks in the rings.
Definitely could. One of the problems with that is that blue, the ones that are frozen both in the 8-foot just to the right of the center line as you look at the overhead, they are slightly angled towards that tight rock that Yannick that Benoit Schwartz just threw. So if you do try and throw the run back over the top, I don't see that second blue stone really going anywhere. You probably end up with just 2 blue stones on the center line. Might clip the 1 top 4 as well. I guess that might be what they're going for. They're hoping that blue-blue combination does contact that last blue stone at the top of the forefoot, and hopefully they can at least spread everything out and give themselves an opportunity to draw with their last.
How tight do they need to get to this guard here? Looks like they need to get fairly tight to that red guard.
Well, I think if you paper by the guard, you're pretty close to jamming. I think you're probably looking at about a half rock. So he does have a little bit of space past the guard, but definitely will need to cut it fairly close. Well, he's not looking for anything fancy here. Just get a bunch of stuff moving, give himself some room to score.
He just papers the guard. Luckily, does move that blue guard away. Didn't move that blue guard away. Team Schwartz, or sir, excuse me, Team Yannick Schwaller, they can have made it really, really difficult. They still can make it very, very difficult for Mike McEwen on their last.
Yeah, absolutely. If he didn't move that blue stone, they would have had the opportunity to probably draw somewhere and really sort of put the nails to him. But they do move it out of the way. Unfortunately, that wasn't really the stone that Mike was worried about. He's more worried about these ones at the top of the forefoot. And as I said earlier, there's still the opportunity to draw to either side of the forefoot, but first end, when you might not exactly know what it's doing out that wide, not what Mike wanted to be facing here.
I like what Benoit is saying. Maybe put one top 12 and partially guard that out-turn, counterclockwise draw path. That side seems to have a little bit more room to draw to than the in-turn side.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, they're both very similar, but if you had to block one or the other, probably that one. I think, thinking back to practice, I'm not entirely sure, but that might have been the side of the sheet that Mike's team was practicing on to begin with. So even if they were the same, you probably want to draw the side that Mike threw the draw for hammer on and force him into something a little bit different. Having a lengthy discussion, though, this is an opportunity, and I think they recognize what they might have going here. They want to make sure they get this call right. I'm wondering if you could ever come down and tap something somewhere that would be really good. Either the one top four, it might be good if you could ever get to that blue combination behind the guard and tap it a foot or two. It's a little bit trickier, though. It looks like they're talking about maybe pushing the shot stone about a rock's width and staying there. That would almost guarantee you the steal of one.
Also tap that rock in the top 8 and spill their shooter a little bit to the left on the overhead side. They'll push the second blue stone that's in the top 8 into the top 4 and cut down the other side of the scoring area a little bit more.
Yeah, that might be the best make, looking at the situation here. That is a little bit trickier of a shot because you have to navigate with that guard, but I haven't really seen them signal that. It looks like they're more worried about the shot stone, so probably just going to draw to the top of the 12-foot, it looks like. If you can get it right on the U of Churchill, that should, the U or the R, that should pretty much cut off any sort of hit on the shot stone and the draw itself.
And I'll probably force Mike McEwen to the other side of the sheet, the in-turn clockwise side.
And while two of those rocks are in the 12-foot, I'm sure Mike can outdraw them. I'm sure he didn't dream last night of drawing against 5 to start this game.
Benoit Schwartz, the last stone thrower for Team Schwaller. They are already sitting 4. And now looking to block off any draw or takeout on this right-hand side of the sheet, as you see it from the overhead, the left of the from the player's vantage point, on the left side from the overhead. And they do get it into the top 12 on that U. Might be a little port there, though, to actually hit the shot stone.
Definitely. I think they maybe would have liked that to curl another couple inches, although
that's a tough port.
Yeah, it's not an easy port, as we say. Like it might still be easy. The problem with the port is if you're ever off one way or the other and you tick one of the blues, you're probably giving up a multiple steal. At least with the draw, as long as you're confident that you can hit some piece of the forfeit, you're going to cut down the steal to at most one. Of course, if you miss the draw entirely, you're giving up more still, but that might be the easier shot. If you're off just a little bit with the draw, you still kind of cut them down, but if you're off trying to go through that port at all, it could be a big score here in the first end.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like you can... Well, the port is wide enough for more than a rock. I was wondering how much weight you needed to get through that port, but it looks like you can play it with a quieter weight as well. I think that port is maybe big enough to not have to throw like a normal weight.
Right, well, one of the other issues is looking at the situation between those two rocks that are near the top of the forfeit. If you do come through the port and remove that shot stone and stick right there, it's debatable whether you're shot anyways. You might also have to play a slight roll with it, which just increases the level of difficulty. So you could be playing a really tough shot through that port and still give up one. If it was me and... as long as you know this, you have some idea of what the spot's doing, it does feel like the draw is probably the easier shot to at least make sure this game doesn't get out.
I would tend to agree with you, Matt. I do like the draw here. I think most teams would play the draw, but historically Mike has preferred playing hits.
Yeah, for all those years being out of Manitoba, Manitoba, one of those provinces that's always been known for producing very effective hitters, and Mike, of course, being one of a long list of champions who can do that. So definitely feeling a bit more comfortable with playing this port. He's going to take it on. Needs to be very specific with the weight choice, because we've seen before that any excess weight will tend to run a lot straighter and you won't get that kind of curl that you're looking for. So you need to make sure that you throw the right weight for where the broom's coming down.
Well, Team McEwen, they're facing 5. They had a long look at this, but Mike McEwen going back to probably his preferred shot, the hit over the draw. It's not an easy one. Has to go through the port. First and final stone could be a big one for Team Schwaller. Can Mike McEwen save it for his team?
Mine's looking pretty close so far.
Based on the way the sweepers are sweeping, it looks decently close. Through the port, it goes through, taps it, played it pretty quiet. They've rolled away, having a look if they're still second shot. Shot stone still, Schwaller. They're having a look over the second shot stone. It is very close, Matt. Any guesses?
I've already embarrassed myself once or twice this week, but if you're gonna make me choose, I'm gonna say blue. I'm gonna give it a guess.
Well, I actually agree with you, and I think they're going to go for the measuring device here. Well, a wonderful shot nonetheless, whether it's a steal of 1 or a steal of 2. That was loads of pressure and not an easy shot for Mike McEwen in the first end.
Yeah, and with that kind of weight choice, like, I'm just a bit surprised. I mean, I don't mean to question Mike's shot calling ability. He's obviously done a lot more than me in his career, but I'm just a bit surprised, like, if they were sweeping it for straight. So if that's the best that you could have gotten out of that shot was like a steal of 1 or for sure, or possibly a steal of 2, I'm just surprised that he didn't go for the draw. And it could be one of those things that they just haven't thrown that spot all weekend. They just didn't know what it was going to do. But we'll see here as they measure the stone what the outcome ends up being.
Ryan Fry taking the reins of the measuring device. They'll have to do this themselves without officials. Now they've swung it across to the red stone. Are they going to tell us?
I think it was blue, but
So
we'll
we
wait
think
for
it's-
confirmation.
We think it's 2 blue for Team Schwaller. We'll come back in a second and confirm that scoreline.
Imagine being able to stream every curling game from every sheet from any event, be it your Wednesday league game, bonspiel, or corporate event. Curling Stadium offers an all-inclusive streaming solution featuring high-quality cameras, ease of use, great reliability, and minimal installation. Offering your sponsors customizable ad space on your streamed curling games and being able to sell video packages to your corporate events for increased revenue. With Curling Stadium, you can stream to any device, be it your mobile phone, tablet, or computer. Push the feed to your desired platform, be it Facebook, YouTube, or any other social media. Curling Stadium is simply the way forward. Where it's commonplace in other sports to televise every game, we want to do the same. Curling is a global sport, and it's time it gets the coverage it needs. Make your curling club the next Curling Stadium.
Welcome back to Curling Stadium, Martensville. What a first end for Team Schwaller. They open with a steal of 2. It could have been even more, but Mike McEwen makes a end-saving, perhaps a game-saving shot to limit the damage to 2. If you're just joining us, my name is Jason Chang. With me is 2019 Canadian World Junior Champion Matt Hall. We'll bring you the action from the ice to your device. This is one of the 4 semifinals out there. We've got the other men's semifinal and the 2 women's semifinals. All can be streamed from curlingzone.com and on the Curling Zone YouTube channel. We talked about the international flavor of this event. On both the men's and women's side, 2 international teams making it into the semifinals. We have Team Schwaller on our feature sheet here, but from Japan, Riku Yanasugawa playing against Colton Flash. Team Flash took 1 in the first. 1-0 lead for them, playing the second as well. And the other Swiss team, Silvana Tiranzoni on the ladies' side, they took 4 in the first, but Team Carey, they've come back with 2 in the second, so it's 4-2 after 2 ends of play. Well, Matt, I've got to ask you about the statistics here.
They're not good.
If you're up 2 in the first end, what are your chances of winning the game?
It's about 80% at the top men's level, and so obviously after winning hammer to start that end, you'd think Mike McEwen's around 60 to 65%, and giving up that steal 2 drops pretty much to 20. So definitely a big swing there, and obviously still lots of game to play. I don't mean to say this game is over, but at the highest level, these teams are so good at defending these leads, and not only that, now sort of Mike's fighting against the momentum. And Yannick's team played an excellent first end, and Mike's team just didn't seem to have their A game. That's not to say they can't find it. I'm sure they will bounce back and make this a closer game than that first end appeared to be, but they're going to really have to get themselves in gear, or else this game might get out of hand really quickly.
Brent Lang, they were trying to get that by the guard. They just rub it, and it is wide open in the rings. You talked about an 80% chance for the top level men's team when you score 2 to open the game. Is it different for the women's game?
It is a little bit different. So it's slightly smaller. It's about a 75% chance for the women. Generally, the women's stats tend to skew a bit more towards the 50-50 split in most situations, but obviously, especially at the highest level, the differences aren't really that big. It's usually around like an 80% to a 76% kind of thing.
Now, we talked about the shot selection in that last end from Mike McEwen. It didn't even look like it was possible for him to score playing that shot, as things moved and rolled away. His shooter rolled away. Maybe it wasn't even possible for him to just give up 1 based on how far that shooter rolled, giving up 2 where it did, right? So if you had drawn and just given up 1 to Schwaller, how would the win percentages change if Schwaller only took 1 in the first?
you're down to just around maybe 40%, maybe a bit better than 40%. So still would be a big swing from the 65 that maybe he started the game with, but definitely something that, it's still a game and you're still sort of battling it out. That extra point is absolutely huge. And what I was really surprised with was based on the sweeping that they were taking, it didn't seem like they were necessarily worried about that rock. It kind of seemed like it was doing exactly what they were planning for. Only end up pushing the rock about a foot and end up giving up the steal of 2 anyways. So I didn't mind that call if you were certain that you were only going to give up the steal of 1, but whether it was just a misjudge on the speed or whatever it is, he ends up just rolling that little bit too far. And I mean, we're picking hairs here. Like, he was a quarter inch probably from sticking around and at least only giving up the steal of 1. So we don't mean to harp on him or anything like that, but it just ended up on the wrong side of that inch and finds himself in a much tougher scenario here.
Well, I am backed up by Mr. Probability, so maybe we can split hairs today.
I'm sure we'll definitely be doing a bit more of that. But looking at how this end is shaping up now, Mike's team was able to sort of get a couple blue rocks moving, and Yannick's team ends up hitting and just rolling out with their own stones. So now the free opportunity to try and sink a rock around this guard and set up a possible 2 score to tie up the game here. Obviously still plenty of rocks to come, but looking like a pretty good setup for Mike.
Yeah, opportunity to make use of this corner guard without a center guard in play. Wraps it around, very nicely done. You can see a piece on the outside.
One of the problems you do have to be careful with, and it's a bit easier because that guard isn't quite as tight. If you ever were a little bit tight and you chip that guard, depending on the weight that you end up throwing, if you chip it too much, it's going towards the rings. That's the only thing that you would be worried about with this shot. So, especially going out wide to a spot that nobody knows, wouldn't be surprised. And yeah, it looks like they've decided against it. They're just going to probably play the run back. One of the great things about this is if you make it really good and you run this guard over the face of the other stone, you're rolling to the center, and if you ever get a little lucky, you could roll in front of your own rock over there, and that sets up a guard for yourself.
Yannick Schwaller and a skip throws third stones for this team. They are taking a run at the red bread. They make it. They do leave the corner guard though, but really nice shot, gets the one out of the rings. Mike, if he's going around the guard now, they're going around the blue guard.
It does leave another guard, and one of the good things is it is Schwaller's color. Meaning if they do have to play the run back again, you're always a little bit more comfortable running back your own stones.
Big sweep here to carry this into the rings. To get it by the guard. Now probably want to stop sweeping so it doesn't overcurl too much.
This one's slipping a little bit further, so this is one where they might now look at making the play on the rock in the rings. Is still pretty close to the guard though, so would need to play it pretty tight to the guard, I think, to stick around.
But unlike the last opportunity, there's no risk of chipping an opponent guard into the rings. If you chip it, you're chipping your own stone.
Exactly, and it looks like they've just decided to throw peel weight and just pick it out. I think this is maybe just a sign of, you're just maybe going out into a spot that you're not 100% sure of. You don't know what the speed will be like out that wide to really take on a finesse shot. So just going to pick it out, and Mike will probably have the opportunity to draw around the guard again. But in that case, depending on where he puts it, you'll have the same run back. maybe the same pick. You could follow him down and freeze. You're going to have some options here. So you're probably not too worried if you're the Schwaller team.
Chelsea Carey, Silvana Tirinzoni, they just wrapped up the third end, and Chelsea Carey has stolen one in 3. That game is now 4-3, Tirinzoni leading. Remember, Silvana Tirinzoni, they opened with a 4 in the first end.
And over on the Grandy side, they steal 3 in the second end. So they're up 4-0 on Team Gim. Gim, remember, got the bye to the semifinal by virtue of their better draw to the button ranking.
Yeah, all those 3 teams, Tirinzoni, Gim, and Grandy finishing the round robin at 4-1. So those draw shots deciding who was the number 1 and number 2 seed. And of course, if you were number 1, number 2 with the bye to the semi, you didn't have to play this morning. You're probably a little bit fresher as well.
Well, it's that age-old argument, right? Do you want that? Maybe you are well relaxed, probably got a nice night of sleep, but that other team gets the chance to sort of have an entire game of practice this morning so they know what the sheet is going to be doing. And one of the things that we saw when I was on the call with Sean for the Grandy Jones game this morning is that the ice seemed to be a little bit straighter. Whether that was just the rocks not being quite as sharp as maybe they started during the weekend, or something about the weather outside, who knows, but we just didn't quite see as much big finish as we were used to seeing all weekend. And here we see Benoit Schwartz under curling a little bit, so something to keep an eye on. We might be seeing a little bit less curl, and for those teams that sort of had the morning off, might be something to keep an eye on if they're able to adjust quickly.
But the format is the way it is with a preliminary round or a fixed number of game preliminary round. None of the teams have a super long break in between games. I know in a triple knockout, if you go through win and into the quarterfinals, you sometimes have a day and a half to wait before you play your quarterfinal game. That can be really, really tough.
Absolutely, and I was watching sort of the schedule as we went through the weekend. It was always really interesting. There were definitely some times where I'm not sure if anybody got an entire day off, but there certainly maybe seemed to be the odd time where you wouldn't play at all until the last draw of the day, and then some other time you might play back-to-back draws. So I think everybody sort of got a little mix of rest and back-to-back games and things like that they had to deal with, but certainly nice that there's nobody who's, in a triple knockout, like you said, if you win through the A side, sometimes you have an entire day and a half, 2 days off before the quarterfinals, and that can be something that's tricky to deal with as well. So looking here, the opportunity for Mike to sit 2.
He was originally calling a hit and roll to do that. I think that is still the call.
You definitely want to roll to the far side, other side of the sheet. You don't want to group up these red stones too much. Maybe they would have liked to, if they were going to roll that way, I think they probably wanted to maybe roll a half rock more to make this double a little bit tougher. As it is still fairly thin. This is not easy by any means, but by leaving it there does give Benoit Schwartz the opportunity to escape this end with most likely a blank. So final rock here in the second M for Benoit Schwartz, looking to make the double. Take away the opportunity for Mike McEwen to score 2 to tie the game. On it early,
It is thin. They get the contact. Everything spins out. So this will be a fairly routine blank for Mike McEwen. Had a chance to score 2 there if he had made a better roll off his first hit and roll. He was definitely on.
It definitely looked like the call was to roll towards the other redstone. I think they just wanted to maybe roll another half rock or so to make that double super thin. Unfortunately, just isn't able to execute it as well as they would have liked, but they're still walking away with a blank, and I think they'll take the blank over the force any day of the week.
So Brent Lang taking a bit of a break. Jonathan Duke sweeping this one through the rings. And it is still 2-0 Team Schwaller after 2 ends of play.
Imagine being able to stream every curling game from every sheet from any event, be it your Wednesday league game, bonspiel, or corporate event. Curling Stadium offers an all-inclusive streaming solution featuring high-quality cameras, ease of use, great reliability, and minimal installation. Offering your sponsors customizable ad space on your streamed curling games and being able to sell video packages to your corporate events for increased revenue. With Curling Stadium, you can stream to any device, be it your mobile phone, tablet, or computer. Push the feed to your desired platform, be it Facebook, YouTube, or any other social media. Curling Stadium is simply the way forward. Where it's commonplace in other sports to televise every game, we want to do the same. Curling is a global sport, and it's time it gets the coverage it needs. Make your curling club the next Curling Stadium.
We asked Saskatchewan what they know about 5G.
More speed? More innovation?
It's gonna make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier.
This is what 5G looks like.
Better, faster.
Sounds like one more G. Sounds pretty good.
I don't know what it means.
All you really need to know is the future of 5G is here and will continue improving through investments in network technology.
A blank in the second end means Team McEwen retains the hammer. As we start the third, Team Schwaller, that steal of 2 in the first. That's why they lead 2-0. We talk a lot about even ends and odd ends, and Mike McEwen, they blank an even end, but when it didn't set up at the end, obviously, the blank was the better option rather than taking one.
Yeah, I think the discussion between odd ends and even ends, I think statistically speaking, it does show itself this early in the game, but the advantage of scoring versus the odd and the even ends versus in the second and third end is very slight. Usually you can expect there to be some kind of blank somewhere along the way after that anyways, so it ends up being very small. But it definitely becomes a lot more important once we start moving to the 4th, 5th, and 6th. That's where you really want to start to do what you can to control the hammer and control when you're going to get the hammer and go for those scores. But definitely just a slight maybe hit that they get the blank there, but I think Mike will take that all day rather than scoring one there and being down one without.
The blue guard was a little bit off kilter, almost even a corner guard. They're going to go around it anyways. That's Team Schwaller. Mike McEwen being down by 2. They put up the corner guard, not unexpected.
Yeah, and I think with those rocks not necessarily hitting the center line the way they would have liked, very good opportunity here for Mike to take on something and be a little bit more aggressive than maybe he would have otherwise. Even if things don't go his way, the center line is pretty much open. He should have a draw to the forefoot. So asking Brent,
he should have a draw. Sorry, Matt, he should have a draw to the forefoot, but didn't want to take it in the first end.
No, and so he hasn't really had the opportunity to throw a draw yet, other than that small tap, I guess, was just sort of a heavy draw. But asking Brent Lang just to try and lock down a stone onto the corner of this blue rock. Doesn't want to roll off, though. This looks maybe a touch heavy. I think they got enough curl that it's still mostly buried behind the guard, so pretty good.
Of course, 5 rock free guard zone in play, so Team Schwaller, they can't remove that corner guard yet. They have to make a play somewhere around that off-center guard. Discussing a freeze or maybe even tapping it.
Yeah, I think you have 2 options here. You can either just freeze the red stone. I think you try and get as close to nose as you can, or maybe even slightly over curl the face. That way, when you play the run back, it's angled in such a way that it won't jam on the blue. Your other option, and I saw Yannick suggested at the start, is you could draw around everything. And with the amount of curl that we've been seeing, I think you could definitely get buried top button or top 4 into a really good spot. But the problem with that is probably Mike's just going to follow you down and lock down another corner freeze. And if he starts getting all these angles working for him, especially if you think about where that red one is at the top of the 12th. Now, if Mike can ever hit that, his shooter's rolling towards that corner guard. So he definitely likes the way the angles are setting up here if you're Mike. And so Yannick is instead going to opt to try and freeze to this red one. Does a fairly good job, doesn't quite get the amount of curl that he was looking at, but it's still angled in a way where that red should go if you throw any weight at it.
Well, you're suggesting now that the angles aren't quite as good for McEwen. Does he try to change the angles again? He's motioning to just draw around everything himself now.
Well, you have a couple options here. That blue rock is the shot stone, but it should be accessible eventually if you want to play it. So it looks like what they're going to try and do here is just draw around the corner guard. Yannick will probably have to either make a play with the run back on the corner guard. I don't see him making a play on those center line stones at the moment, at least. So if he ever misses the run back or the double on that side of the sheet, then Mike will eventually have the option of walking over and removing the shot stone.
This one looks really nice. That's pretty darn buried.
You're pretty happy with that result if you're Mike. Keeps it high enough above the tee line that there's really no issue at all with waiting for Yannick to freeze it, although it looks like he might try some kind of heavy draw. You don't need to remove this red rock. At least if you push it out into the open, it's something that you can deal with later, and in that case you'd be rolling towards the center line to sit too. Even if you touch the guard, your shooter's probably going to roll into a good spot for yourself.
Well, it is coming close to the guard. Can they hold it on the sweep? They just graze it, and that's probably the worst thing to happen with that rock, is just grazing the guard, because the guard doesn't go anywhere. Redstone's still fully buried, and you've got nothing out of your shooter.
Absolutely, and you know that we see that a lot at this highest level, probably a lot more than we should have. You know, there's nothing wrong with putting faith in your sweepers, and it definitely looked like they had the opportunity to get that by, but if you're going to wreck on the guard, you need to move it out of the way. So it would have been much more prudent to sort of bail halfway down on that shot. Make sure you move that redstone out of the way and roll your shooter into a good spot. Fortunately, just whisker it. Don't move it anywhere, so Mike is still sitting shot. Now it looks like he's taking the opportunity to draw a second stone around there now.
Yeah, I think Mike is actually sitting second and third. I think that blue stone from Schwaller still shot stone, but it is accessible right now.
Yeah, yes, and that's what I mean. He's going to draw around. He knows he's not going to be shot, but he knows he can access that blue stone at any point. Actually, I thought he might do it now, and he did sort of suggest the idea, I think, to start, but this is also a great call. If you can get in there and sit 2, 3, 4, now if you ever get the opportunity to take out that blue one, you're looking at a big score.
That is what they do. They are sitting 2, 3, 4, Team McEwen throwing red stones. That Schwaller stone looking more and more lonely. That shot stone that's just fully 8 foot, slightly exposed on that left-hand side of the sheet behind that off-center guard. If you want to be really aggressive, I suppose you could draw around everything and sit 2, top 8, back 8.
Absolutely. Only issue with that kind of thing is if you ever go a little bit too deep, of course, Mike can access that blue shot stone right now. You don't want to put it into a spot where he can just make the double regardless. And you know that if you play this run back or try to make some rocks fly here, if you don't make the run back, you at least move out of the way then even if Mike makes that hit, there's probably some easy doubles sitting around somewhere. And with a 2-point lead, I think you're okay with giving up 2 given the situation that you're in right now.
So Yannick Schwaller, he's looking for the run back. He might even get all of them to go away at the right angle. I think he's going to jam it, though. Redstone jams. The other one rolls to the side of the 8-foot now. Mike McEwen is shot stone.
Oh, but you know, almost deceptively good with the result there. Interestingly enough, that red one that was rolling across the rings, if that rolls a rock or 2 less, then Mike wouldn't have the opportunity to get this blue stone out. It actually rolled about a rock far enough that Mike can now hit this out, and if it had rolled a little bit less, yes, he'd still be shot, but the opportunity for a big end wouldn't be maybe as prevalent. Now as it is, it might be there to sit 4. You might be able to remove that blue stone. If you can get enough of it to keep your shooter on, you would be sitting 4. Granted, with still a couple guards that Yannick could save the end by going around.
In curling, it's always a little bit of a cat and mouse game, or when you go for it, right? And this is the moment where they're thinking about, do I need to make a play on that blue stone now? If I wait one more, is it too late, or is this the right moment?
I think
if you go too early, it gives the other team more opportunities to make doubles or triples and kind of get out of the end. If you go too late, you might not be able to score your multiple score that you're hoping for.
Yeah, I think if you're going to make a move, you kind of have to do it now. Anything else that I see, any sort of draw, there's nowhere that you can really draw, because if you try and draw around, then Yannick might be able to access that blue stone as maybe a small tap or a run back. If you try to draw maybe around that blue guard, you might not ever get another opportunity to play this shot. So I think if you're going to do it, do something. Not that you necessarily have to access that blue stone to sit for, but if you're going to do something around those rocks around the center line, you kind of have to do it now.
I guess there's a couple ways to jiggle it. One is moving the blue-red-blue combination as you see it closest to the center line. The other is just to make a direct play on that blue stone. The sense I'm getting is if you make a direct play on the blue stone and just push it out, where you leave the shooter, you might leave a double, and the blue would roll behind that off-center blue guard.
Definitely a possibility. One of the things about playing this rock at the top of the 12 is if you ever think you can get to nose with a lot of weight, it probably just goes off the red top 8 into the other one over on the side. You would be able to get rid of that blue stone that's in the 8-foot, but that other one isn't really going anywhere. So I thought they might just play the direct hit on the one. And yes, you would likely leave a double somewhere, but if Yannick doesn't make it perfect to roll behind, then he's flirting with giving up a big end. So looks like they've actually decided to play one more draw around this corner guard and set themselves up. There's a bit of an argument that you might not ever get another chance to play that blue one if you do this, but certainly possible that you will, and this sort of puts a lot of pressure on the Schwaller team to execute their next few shots, or else they're going to give a free opportunity for Mike to sit a bundle.
See, McEwen, they've played this shot the last couple of rocks, so they should know the speed and the line. As long as they haven't forgotten, because they had a pretty long discussion about moving that blue stone. Looks pretty good. Well, first thing that Yannick motioned was draw around everything. now saying maybe you can play a hit and roll behind everything.
Well, you know, Jason, I just took a look over at my other screen and I was wondering why I had 2 Grandy Gim games showing, and well, the reason is that Tiranzoni game is over. Looks like Tiranzoni came up with a score of possibly 5 in the 4th end to take a 9-3 win against Chelsea Carey and move herself into the championship final. Wow.
Thanks for that update, Tiranzoni. They jumped out to 4-0 lead. Carey got 2, stole 1 back, and was threatening to throw your whole stats book out the window, but Team Tiranzoni, well, the favorite after 1 end, a heavy favorite after 1 end if you're up by 4, holds on and actually takes it pretty easily.
And actually, I'm just took a look over at the official score. There must have been a rock I didn't see. It was actually a score of 6. So it's a 10-3 final for Silvana. Wins in 4 ends, and they have a nice long break before going out for the final.
Yeah, they can grab a bite, regroup, maybe debrief, and prepare for who they might play next. Of course, the other semifinal, Inji Kim from Korea, Clancy Grandy, now representing BC. She was a longtime player out of Ontario, teaming up with the young BC squad there.
Absolutely. I believe actually a Grand Slam champion, if I remember correctly, playing with Ali Flaxey a few years ago. So definitely plenty of experience herself. And she's off to a 5-0 lead over Gim. And if they were to actually that I think about it, if Clancy Grandy was able to hold on to win that game, that'd be the 2nd event in a row that would have Tiranzoni facing off against Clancy Grandy in the final, where Tiranzoni won it in the Summer Series last weekend. And actually, Yoonji Kim won her event that she was in Alberta last weekend as well. So definitely some teams off to some hot starts this season.
Well, based on where they put the broom, I believe they're playing a hit on that rock behind the corner guard and trying to roll it behind the pack of stones just off center on the left-hand side of the center from the thrower perspective.
I think so. I'm trying to remove one of those reds, and I'd like to roll at least 4 or 5 feet to get around, but there's a lot of reds sitting around. If you don't come up with something good here, you could be in some trouble.
Yannick Schwaller, they're up by 2, under a little bit of pressure in this end, sweeping it hard.
It's going to be very close.
The roll, will it go far enough? Yes, it does. It has a bit of real estate to hit here because there are so many rocks there. It will stop. Having a quick look, who shot stone? Red is still shot stone, it looks like, but blue now 2nd and 3rd. That will make them a little bit more comfortable as this end progresses into the last couple of stones. Still 4 red stones in the rings, but no obvious double on the blue stones right now.
No, not that I see. You could remove one of them. One of the problems, so if you remove that blue stone that's in the top of the 8, but you roll somewhere, you're probably going to sit 1, 3, 4, 5, but you're exposing that red stone where Yannick might be able to hit in off of it, or he could just ignore it entirely and draw around everything into the 4-foot. And if you remove that blue stone from the top of the 8, you don't really have any way of accessing it. I don't really see a viable option where you're going to be able to get rid of both of those blue stones, and Yannick's not just going to throw another one in there. So best option here might just be to try and draw around yourself, bite the top of the 4-foot, and sit shot, sit 2.
Yeah, sitting 2. They do that.
I think they're going to take some time here to try and find if there is any way to bring those other red ones into play. I'm not really seeing it, but so I think If it was me, I'd probably just be trying to draw somewhere and sit 2 and go for your 2 that way. And if you do end up drawing around everything to the top of the forfeit, you sit 2. What is Yannick going to do? He probably has to play some kind of tap on the blue stone, maybe pick out the red. But if he's not careful, you still might have a shot for 3.
So it looks like they're going to make a play off the top blue stone. And I think they're hoping that that blue stone that's in the top 8 will squirt sideways and leave red maybe sitting 2 after this situation. I don't know if that... Do you think that red in the top 8 will squirt in far enough to sit second or shot rock after this situation?
I think it depends. Depends what weight you're throwing. Any sort of real hit weight here, I think that red will just go out the back. But this is a little bit wide. They need to curl a ton to get anything.
They don't get anything, and now Team Schwaller feeling a little bit more comfortable. They first looked at picking the red stone. You have to be careful not to pick out the blue stone if you do that. I would probably not play that myself.
Definitely something these guys are capable of, but I think there might be some better options here. Like I said, we've seen enough curl. If you could ever slip a draw in there, it's going to be very difficult to get rid of for Mike. Of course, then you're risking giving up the multiple score. If you ever do make that pick, it's pretty much a guaranteed force. That looks like what they've decided to do.
Well, that's a man of confidence. I would be very scared to pick out my own blue stone doing this. But my name isn't Benoit Schwartz, so...
It's not usual that these guys are a whole rock off of the line they want to be. So I would expect them to be a little close.
They do get the pick. They were a little close to that blue stone, though. Swept it all the way to hold the line. Their heart rate might have increased just a little bit as that rock was coming down.
Yeah, but they executed it well. Really no options here if you're Mike.
Yeah, and now
of course, there's still 2 rocks to come, so still the possibility to probably set something up, but anything he does, I think Yannick's going to have an opportunity to force him.
Yeah, Yannick's blue rock that's still there can be slashed into the button area. That's the one that Mike had been talking about moving a few rocks ago. Now maybe regretting he didn't move it earlier. Looks like he wants to play a hit. Blue onto red, onto that blue stone. Once again, you were saying, can you actually keep that red stone around in the rings? Because if it just flies out the back, I'm not sure it helps you all that much.
No, you have to be very careful with the weight selection here. I almost thought even the weight they chose on the last one might have been a bit too much. I mean, that red is angled to the blue, so it's going to take off a fairly decent amount of speed. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what the goal of... I guess it would remove the blue from the 8-foot, and if Yannick ever missed, you'd be able to hit that back blue, probably just for 2. But I don't think you're ever getting rid of the stone top 12. It's probably just going to jam behind the guard.
So we'll see. There's the contact. The red spills onto the button. The blue spreads out a bit. So it is McEwen with shot stone now. It is protected. There is a straight back double.
And if he makes it, it's good luck trying to find a way to get in there. He might have to go wide with the in-turn and hit and roll in off that stone top right 8-foot.
Yeah, with the angle, it is a nose double. You make that, you're sitting 3 and you've cut off all the draw paths pretty much.
By the way, big opportunity here for Team Schwaller. Capitalize on this one. You're you're almost guaranteeing the force, I believe. Needs it to curl. Maybe get it over the top.
It jams on the other blue, but it does spill out, and, well, opportunity for 2 for Mike McEwen.
Almost incredibly lucky. That wasn't far off from jamming that stone at the back, and it would have been a draw for 3, but thankfully through enough weight, it spills out, and now a free chance for Mike to get that draw weight confidence in him.
Yeah, he didn't look comfortable throwing the draw through the first couple of ends. Had a couple of chances maybe where a draw could have been used. It deferred to the hit. It's nice to have an opportunity, like you said, to lay one down without too much risk, and you have a little backing to work with if you need it. Well, this end had a potential for more than 2, but I think Team McEwen, they'll be happy tying this game up after 3 ends if this shot is made.
Absolutely. Especially with how they've been playing, there's been some uncharacteristic misses from the McEwen squad. Thinking back to that flash by Fry in this end, giving up that steal of 2 in the first. I think, all things considered, having a tie game after 3 ends, they might just take a deep breath and roll along with it.
Well, the sweepers have backed away, but I think they were pretty happy with it. It does catch on the red, uses it as a backing, and it is 2 points for Team McEwen, and they've tied it up after 3 ends of play. We'll be back in Martensville in just a minute.
Imagine a place with endless possibilities. Imagine a place where people come together to build families, businesses, and communities. Imagine a place where small-town values and progressive qualities are in perfect harmony. Imagine a place rich with so much vitality. Imagine your future in Martensville.
Imagine being able to stream every curling game from every sheet from any event, be it your Wednesday league game, bonspiel, or corporate event. Curling Stadium offers an all-inclusive streaming solution featuring high-quality cameras, ease of use, great reliability, and minimal installation. Offering your sponsors customizable ad space on your streamed curling games and being able to sell video packages to your corporate events for increased revenue. With Curling Stadium, you can stream to any device, be it your mobile phone, tablet, or computer. Push the feed to your desired platform, be it Facebook, YouTube, or any other social media. Curling Stadium is simply the way forward. Where it's commonplace in other sports to televise every game, we want to do the same. Curling is a global sport, and it's time it gets the coverage it needs. Make your curling club the next Curling Stadium.
2-2 tie here in one of the men's semifinals, McEwen and Schwaller. Curling Stadium, Martensville International, already one final in the books, Vildana Tirinzoni. A big win over Team Chelsea Carey. This Swiss team, Yannick Schwaller trying to join their Swiss teammates into the men's final.
Absolutely, and I was just in the break looking back at how these teams got here. Of course, we already said finished the round robin with 4-1 records. Interestingly, both lost to the exact same team. Off the top of your head, you know what that team was?
Oh, you've stumped me.
It was the Japanese team, Team Yanagasawa, who has actually opened up a 3-1 lead on Colton Flash in their semifinal. So possible it could... is that a possible omen if Yanagasawa can hold on to go to the final? Regardless, he'll face a team that he's already beaten.
Well, he's halfway there right now, and if you are watching from Korea, you might be watching our Korean language feed, or if you don't know about it, you can go onto the Korean language feed as well. So if you're a Korean native or Korean speaker and watching our game today, 안녕하세요. Good afternoon.
So in this game, McEwen getting 2 good rocks set up here. Maybe not exactly where they wanted that stone, ending up in the top 12. Probably would have liked that as either a guard or top 4, but this stone here by Schwaller, maybe over curling, going to just touch that center guard over. Not a bad result, actually. Moves it over to another corner guard, something they can use later. I think you're going to see Mike continue to guard this for a little bit.
And speaking of that game with the Korean feed, it is Eunji Kim trailing Clancy Grandy 5-0. They're also in the 4th end, and Grandy again putting a lot of pressure on Team Gim in the 4th, but not unexpected. Team Gim needs to take a lot of chances now, down 5-0 in the 4th to try to score a few points, get back into this game. So we do want to thank our friends in Korea and Japan for providing the local language commentary. The Japanese game, Yannick Flash, there is a Japanese commentary to that as well. You go to the YouTube stream of those games. The link to the local language streams are located in the chat box. So just click on those links and you'll be taken to those feeds.
I think that's fantastic, and I think our producers are always looking for extra options for that. I saw somebody in one of the streams asking if there was a German broadcast, so I think that's something they might be looking forward to possibly figuring out how to do in the future.
Have to start working on our German, Matt. Could be us doing it. Just need to know a few words, right? Hit,
yeah. Draw, hack, hit. I'm sure. Give me a couple weeks. Maybe we'll see how that ends up going.
And some of the curling terms are the same as well. I'm pretty sure hack is probably something quite similar in most languages. I know it is in Japanese. They say haku for the hack. So.
Well, there you go. You're halfway there already. Yeah, this end though, interesting on that last rock by Schwaller, was able to actually roll into the rings over on the side. So another good guard by Mike, but possibly something they might be able to bring into play here if they continue this on. For the moment though, probably just trying to peel this guard, maybe get the one over at the other side of the rings as well.
Pretty close. Catches it and unlucky not to get that out.
Yeah, I'm sure if you told them to try and make that hit and not get rid of it, they'd look at you like you were crazy, but we're able to make that happen there.
Well, a couple of corner guards in play on either side of the sheet. 2 McEwen stones in the top 12 and the back of the 12, so...
One of the things that's sneakily good about that, though, is look where he moved that stone. Moved it directly behind that corner guard. So if Mike just tried to guard that top 12 rock like he's been doing, then Yannick will just go around that corner, freeze to the red, and sit shot that way and try and set up his deuce. So maybe a bit of a lucky break there if you're Yannick Schwaller, but as for the time being, Mike's going to try and make a little bit of a tap on this stone at the top of the 12 foot, try and keep that from happening.
did
no?
they just settle on the guard here?
I guess I saw him signal for the tap initially, but they must have had a discussion and changed it. And they're going to go right directly back to this run back pick. This also works too. If you are able to get rid of that stone out from behind that corner guard, leaves just one red stone in the rings, and Mike has to be careful. If he ever leaves a double, then you're bringing that other blue into play. I guess I like this. I thought we might see Yannick try and freeze around that corner, but trying to do it this way, you always keep the opportunity for possibly a blank alive.
Yeah, you mentioned that blue. There is a biter, if you can see it on the overhead, right side of about the 2 o'clock, 2:30 position.
Very close.
Drives it through the ring, through the hole, sorry. Probably after the same shot again, nothing much has changed. Although at some point you might see Team Schwaller switch gears, right? They might just decide we're going to go around the center situation.
Absolutely. At some point, this strategy, if you keep missing it, it's not going to work eventually. So it's up to them to decide, is it more likely for them to try and get their 2? And I think we might be there now by playing something else. Depends on where this stone goes, though.
A little bit tighter, and
I think we're going to take a long look at this. If you make the nose hit double, does that other red stone come close to the triple?
Is the triple there? Maybe, but does the first red stone jam on that side blue stone?
Also another thing they need to think about. I think if you're hitting it on the nose, it probably goes underneath. I think if you're jamming the red together, the roll might be a little bit there, but I think a nose hit should be enough for it to go under and out.
Just joining us, this is a semifinal game. All of the games on the ice are semifinal games. Curling Stadium, Martensville. My name is Jason Chang. Matt Hall with me, 2019 Canadian World Junior Champion. Second for Tyler Tardy that year. McEwen and Schwaller deadlocked at 2, playing the fourth end. An attempt at the triple. They make contact with all the stones, but does jam the red stone on the back red.
Gets rid of 2 of them, though, and rolls to sort of guard that other blue rock. Now, Mike can pretty much put something anywhere in the rings, and going to be unlikely that they'll leave a double, but a little bit of a silver lining there. Colton Flash was able to score 1 in that previous end, so Team Yanagasawa holds a 3-2 lead with the hammer in the 5th end of their semifinal.
Remember, Colton Flash, they went through the preliminary round as the number 1 seed, 5-0, the only team to be 5-0 on either the women's or the men's draw. Riku Yanagasawa, they went through a quarterfinal game earlier, defeating Steve Laycock. They were 3-2 and the last team in on the men's side, but they're in the semifinal and they have a lead here in their match. They're through 4, 3-2, Yanagasawa. Well, Matt, what are they discussing here? Whether to go around the guard on the left or the right?
Right, yeah. They're trying to figure out exactly where the best place to go is, and Mike's going to come down and have another discussion about it. I mean, intuition would tell you that probably going around the blue might be better because you're getting so much separation with the stones. I see what he might be worried about. If you go around that blue top of the rings, you might leave a short run back for the Schwaller team, and if he ever hits it perfect, he gets 2 blue stones in the rings. If he gets it really good, you make the run back, can get your shooter rolling over towards that other red stone. So I think he's just worried about possibly leaving the run back and maybe letting Schwaller set something up, and I think that's why he initially talked about drawing around the red rock. If he puts that in a good spot, there's really no good run back for Yannick. He could try to play the triple, but that's obviously really tough. So I think after discussing it, they've decided to stick with the original call to go around the red stone, but we'll see here when he sets up what turn he decides to go with. It looks like it is the intern, so he's going to try and bury probably top 8, top 4 weight just around that red corner guard.
You need to make sure you get this at least half buried, I think, or else there might be a double. It will bury. Drag it just to biting the 8, I believe. They're still thinking about Team Schwaller, trying to bring that blue stone that's just biting into play. They were first indicating maybe playing a quiet weight hit on the red stone that is completely buried, basically. Not sure if that's what they ended up with or just deciding to make a draw.
Yeah, there's some kind of audible decision made, and unfortunately we don't have access to the player microphones, so we're not entirely sure what the call is. With that kind of ice, it looks like they're throwing some kind of a freeze. Not sure if they're going to freeze to the front one or the back one, but probably I would imagine to that back stone. That's the only way to get shot.
Yeah, if you freeze to the front, you won't be shot, I don't think, and you can't easily remove the back red one either later on, so I think going to the back makes the most sense.
It's going to be very close. How good is that?
It's nice when we guess correctly.
Yeah. It's a tough job we're doing, but I hope we're doing it well.
That is a very nice phrase. Do you think it can be blasted out? It's locked on there, actually.
It's that's very difficult. I mean, you probably could take a crack at it. You could probably move that blue stone enough to get it out into the 12-foot and leave yourself shot. But, I mean, they were already thinking about playing that maybe lightweight takeout on that red stone that's buried anyways. You might leave that for a multiple score. And obviously, if you ever, it's a very thin hit, and if you ever don't hit it perfect, you end up giving them a free draw for 2 anyways. I think what they're probably going to do is just try and follow him down and make an even better freeze, put it in a spot where Schwaller can't pick it out for, or get rid of it for a couple. Final rock here for Mike McEwen. Needs to be very careful with this to make sure that the angle on the freeze is as good as it can be. I think just slightly angled on the center line side of the stone should be good. This one already a much tighter line than the Schwaller team was taking. Might actually be trying to hit it.
Tap back.
Yeah, generate a little bit of space, but stay on the nose.
Brett Lang has been sweeping it right from the start to hold the line, but it does over curl. It is still shot stone, I believe. Actually, no, I don't think so. I'm having another look. I think blue is still shot stone.
I think it is blue, and one of the things that was surprising there was on Benoit Schwartz's first stone, for most of the draw, his rock was on the other side of the center line, and he used that really big late swoop to get up to the nose of the stone. Rewatching that Mike McEwen shot, his draw was almost already across the center line by the time it was halfway down the sheet. So you could tell it was probably going to get a bit more curl than the shorts team. He maybe was trying to be a little bit heavier and generate some separation and stay on the nose, but either way, just over curled a little bit, leaves this open draw here for 2 for Benoit Schwartz.
Opportunity to take 2 more here in the fourth. Try to reestablish that 2-point lead. The sweepers look quite happy as it now approaches the rings. Needs it to stop in the forefoot, and it does. Roundfry kicks it away, and it is a 4-2 score. Team Schwaller leading after 4 ends.
We asked Saskatchewan what they know about 5G.
More speed, more innovation.
It's gonna make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier.
This is what 5G looks like.
better, faster.
Sounds like 1 more G. Sounds pretty good.
I don't know what it means.
All you really need to know is the future of 5G is here and will continue improving through investments in network technology.
Imagine being able to stream every curling game from every sheet from any event, be it your Wednesday league game, bonspiel, or corporate event. Curling Stadium offers an all-inclusive streaming solution featuring high-quality cameras, ease of use, great reliability, and minimal installation. Offering your sponsors customizable ad space on your streamed curling games and being able to sell video packages to your corporate events for increased revenue. With Curling Stadium, you can stream to any device, be it your mobile phone, tablet, or computer. Push the feed to your desired platform, be it Facebook, YouTube, or any other social media. Curling Stadium is simply the way forward. Where it's commonplace in other sports to televise every game, we want to do the same. Curling is a global sport, and it's time it gets the coverage it needs. Make your curling club the next Curling Stadium.
We're back here in Martensville, second half of this semifinal game. Team Schwaller taking 2 in the fourth end to double up on Mike McEwen 4-2. Matt Hall with me. My name is Jason Ching. Now, Team Schwaller, they opened the game with a steal of 2, and you told me they had about an 80% chance of winning the game. Now they're leading by 2 again, but it's now into the fifth end. What do the stats say about this situation?
Well, they're pretty close to the same, maybe slightly worse for the McEwen side. Now, probably up to about an 85% chance. So very similar, and we've already seen Mike claw back with the 2 already, but he's starting to run out of ends a little bit here. If he could get a 2 back, but just not as much time to maybe claw himself back into a position. So back up to about 85% here for Team Schwaller.
Well, if you told me that and I was in Yannick's situation, I'd be pretty happy to have an 85% chance of winning. But you still got to execute through the last half of the game to take it home.
Absolutely, and that's, those numbers are generated from hundreds and hundreds of games that have been played over the years, but it all comes down to whether or not you can execute. It's, 15% chance is better than 0. It's been done before.
And we've seen some good comebacks this week so far in Martensville. So certainly earlier in the season as well, you might see a little bit more rust in the players and the throws. So maybe even a higher chance early season than later in the season when all the teams are peaking.
I think so, especially with as good as these teams are, a 2-point lead when they're playing at their best can be extremely difficult to overcome. When they're making, and it's all those defensive shots, all those long run backs, those doubles, things that you might not entirely expect to be made as well this early in the season. So I think there's definitely going to be opportunities for Mike, but he's going to have to push the envelope a little bit, try to get some good angles, and really set things up for himself well. And well, that's not what they were looking for there on that last shot. Brent Lang coming up well light on that freeze attempt, leaving another center guard for the Schwaller team to utilize. So they're going to wrap one right around, and Mike could be in some trouble early here.
Yes, and Michelle, the second stone thrower for Team Schwaller. He joined the, I guess, former Peter de Cruz team with Benoit Schwartz at the beginning of the last quadrennial, I believe. I think Sven was skipping his own team back then. Kind of built this super team out of Switzerland. They've had a lot of success over the years.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult to say, but I think it's fair to say that maybe that Peter de Cruz, Benoit Schwartz, Sven McEwen matchup was never able to really break through and win that world championship or Olympic gold that I think was their goal when they put that team together. Came away, still did very well, came away with a number of bronze medals at the world championships, but was never able to take that one extra step. So hoping maybe having some young blood on the team with Yannick Schwaller, former world junior champion himself, they'll be able to utilize that and make that final push.
And Sven's partner, I believe, is Alina Petz, who's already found her way into the women's final, so he'd like to join her in the men's side final.
That would be a nice reunion back home. Two winners on tour.
Must be a little bit of a rivalry. Who's the higher ranked team on the... Who's doing better at each Bonspiel? Who's bringing home more cash to pay the bills?
Well, I think if Sven was smart, he would just say that she's better all the time.
And you might say the stats prove it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's tough to argue with. I believe, what are they at, 4 world championships now?
I think Alina's won 4.
Yeah, so it's tough to argue with results. But yeah, the result here, not so good. Just touching off that guard. Wasn't really all... I didn't really think that guard was going to be in play with the amount of curl that we're seeing, but maybe just got a little bit tight on it, touches the guard, rolls through. Does open it up, so you're going to have another chance at that red, but maybe an opportunity here for Mike to put a rock in a good spot.
Our viewers might be thinking Sven is a world champion himself, and he is in the mixed doubles discipline. He's won a couple of world mixed doubles golds, 2011 and 2018. But if you're Alina, she'll come back and say, well, one of those golds was with her. So.
Yeah. Doesn't count if it counts for both of them. My apologies to Sven. I'm not as well versed on the mixed doubles side of things as maybe I should be, but I love playing it. I don't know, have you played much mixed doubles yourself?
I also do enjoy playing it a lot. It's really warmed up to me. That discipline, when it first started, a decade and a half ago, didn't make a lot of sense to me, having played a traditional 4-person game. But after playing it, it has gotten... it's very fast-paced. That's what I really love about it. The games don't drag on for too long. The strategy may be a little bit more simple, but the rock positioning is very, very key because you only have 5 rocks during an end to throw.
Absolutely, and for me, always being a skip in my career when it first started, I always thought it was just too much sweeping for me. I was never really into it, but I will say it's warmed up to me. I love playing the game. I think it's a lot of fun if you can find someone that you enjoy playing with, and yeah, it's certainly... Now that it's in the Olympics, and we've done pretty well, Canada has in the last number of years at the Olympics and the World Championships. So here the opportunity for Yannick Schwaller to hit this stone. If you hit it on the nose, I think he will be shot. It's possible he might want to get a small flop in behind the guards.
They're sweeping it for curl, trying to get it to move across the face. Hits it pretty much on the nose. Team Schwaller, they do have a 4-2 lead right now, playing the fifth.
And I think they did get enough at least to sit second shot, so they are sitting 2. Mike has some work here to try and set up a multiple score. He can always come around the other side, hit and roll in off that other blue rock. You have to be careful not to go too far and leave Yannick a short run back. As we check in on some of the other semifinal games, Team Yanagisawa opening up a 6-2 lead now over Colton Flash, looking to end his undefeated run this weekend. They're playing in the 6th end, it looks like, and Clancy Grandy also up to a 6-2 lead over Unchi Gim in their 6th end of play.
Well, that's a miss for Ryan Fry. He seems to be just a little bit off this game. A couple of misses from him over the course of that match. They were trying to hit that blue stone shot stone through the port. The port was pretty big, but still manages to clip the guard.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, Ryan's one of those players that when he's on, he's not the kind of guy you want to be playing against. He's such a good thrower that when he has his stuff figured out, he can be a deadly weapon. But today just hasn't seemed to have what he's been looking for. We saw a flash in the, I believe it was the 3rd end. Couple just missed draws in there, sort of wrecking off the guard a little bit. Definitely not where he was hoping to be today.
Yes, certainly he's been one of the top thirds over the years. Obviously a Olympic gold medalist with Brad Jacobs, and whenever Brad Jacobs talks about their couple of incredible seasons together, winning a Brier and then winning that Olympic gold medal, he attributes a lot of that success to the way Ryan Fry was playing at third stones.
Absolutely. Yep. He was definitely the MVP of that 2013 year when they won the Brier, and then still had to make their way through the pre-trials that year, but ended up winning the Olympic trials, beating, I believe it was John Morris in the final that year to go to the Olympics, and beat David Murdoch in the gold medal game of those Olympics.
They decided to hit this red stone and sit 3.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most prudent thing to do. Of course, with the way the situation is lined up, you could ignore it. Absolutely. You could just draw around the center, try and go in a good spot and put the pressure on. But this is really sort of the safest call. You get rid of it. Now it's up to Mike to really figure out how he's going to generate a deuce. Probably has to draw this into a really good spot. And the other thing that's good for the Schwaller team is if Mike doesn't put this in the right spot, that blue top 12 is always accessible for a run back for Yannick. So if you're Mike, you're a little bit deep, he's going to follow you down and freeze. And if you're a little bit too far over, he's going to play that run back. So plenty of options here if you're Benoit Schwartz.
Ryan Fry looking to make amends for that last miscue. Looking for a shot. Full 4-foot, full top 4-foot. They're hoping it stops in time. It won't. Wasn't even close, in fact. Slips right through.
Yeah, just not Ryan Fry's best game today, I'm sure. This is one that I'm sure once he comes off, it's going to be pretty easy to put behind him. Obviously, he's a much better player than what we've seen, but it's just one of those days where you can't find your draw weight or everything just seems to go wrong.
Yeah, everyone has those days. I can go a month without making a shot, so I take a day, any day.
So now the question, if you're the Schwaller team, is where is the best place to put this stone? Of course, if you try and go into the rings unless you're top of the button, you're going to leave pretty much an open hit for Mike to possibly hit and roll in off that one on the side of the forefoot. You could just guard the hole. I think that would probably be a pretty good shot. It looks like with this ice, they probably decided to come in, try and go top 4.
And that second option you were talking about, maybe just edge to edge, that hole that's between the blue guard and the blue shot stone, try to place the rock maybe in the 8-foot, right in that hole.
Yeah, I think that would be a really nice position. As long as, if you're going to go in the hole, I think you got to be top 12 at worst. You don't want to leave the opportunity for Mike to have a double and roll in somewhere good. With this line, you should get a little bit of finish. Looks like going to bury a little bit.
You don't want to pull too much, because that hit and roll now is there.
Yeah, I think it just over curled from what they were looking for. Weight was very good. Mike still has to be careful, though. If he makes the, as I said before, you make the hit and roll to the back of the forefoot, that blue on the right-hand side as you look at the overhead top 12, that could always be promoted back by the Schwaller team. So depending on where you put this, could be a run back, could just be a tap to the forefoot to set shot. Definitely going to need some help from them, though, to set up this 2 still.
Well, pretty cool shot here. Blue is sitting quite a few rocks now. The path to the forefoot getting more and more congested as well. Here is an opportunity for you to get one in there. At least 6 shot stone for now. Yes, it might not be perfect, but you can at least breathe a bit of a sigh of relief if you can get the roll behind. Mike McEwen, this is a similar shot to what Ryan Fry played a couple of rocks ago, or tried to play a couple of rocks ago. Just get through this port.
And it just took off on them. I'm not sure what happened there, if they just got caught on something, or if it maybe grabbed, but just took a turn and got lots of curl. They weren't really worried about it, so must have been close.
Yeah, they were off the sweep a little bit, and then it did move on them.
And I think it's just one of those days now where unfortunately just couldn't buy a shot if they wanted to. But for the moment, they're going to have a lot of pressure on them. Yannick, I think, just going to call this guard, block up that hole, and then how do you not give up a steal? Can you come way off the side red and roll into the forefoot, or make a double that way? It's going to be very tricky.
That's a very long roll for sure. You probably can make the double. The draw path on the intern it's not a lot of space. There might be just enough to get closer, a little bit more of that forefoot with the draw, but Mike's shied away from that draw before earlier in the game as well.
Definitely the opportunity to sort of, quote-unquote, put the nails in the coffin here, I think, if you're Benoit Schwartz. Just need to put this guard up in the right spot, block up this hole, and see what Mike can come up with.
We don't want this to come too deep and over curl. It looks okay. Might still be a port, but it's narrow.
Very tight port. I think it might be there, but it's... Gosh, that's difficult. Definitely, it's the only reasonable thing I'm seeing, though. If there's a port there, I think you have to give it a try. Although, very difficult.
4, though.
Yeah, I was about to say, very difficult to get a plan B here. I think if you touch either of those guards, it's probably handshakes. It's very difficult to see yourself like rolling in somewhere that's going to cut them down. At this point, you don't really have a choice, though. I'm not sure if that wide in-turn draw is there, and even if it is, like this, it's arguable whether that's even easier than this to begin with. They've played this spot a lot more.
Yeah, and at some point, cutting them down when you're already down by 2 doesn't help your percentages very much, right? You're still getting more and more in the hole.
Yeah, going down 3 is just not really that good. If there is a reasonable shot to score here, you kind of have to take it on.
Whereas if you were in a tied game, that draw, even if you get second shot, might be the best option statistically. Well, final stone, Mike McEwen here in the 5th. He's got a tough one here. Got to negotiate the port, but the sweepers are already off it. This is all over the guard. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe it grabbed a little bit, but Ryan Fry extends his hand to Yannick Schwaller. It is game over officially. I think that might be 4. Was it 5?
I think it's 5. I think they ended up raising that rock in.
So it is 5 for Team Schwaller in the 5th. Then they join the Tirinzoni rank into the final. Those are the 2 finals we've had. A wonderful game by Team Schwaller. The Mike McEwen rank, they just didn't seem to have their best stuff today.
Yeah, just one of those things that I don't think it's going to take a whole lot for them to put behind them. Just everything that could go wrong did, and just one of those days they didn't have their A game, and all credit where credit's due. Schwaller did not miss a whole lot of shots. They really didn't give Mike McEwen any opportunity right from the first end to have anything easy to get underneath him either.
Just looking ahead, we can't say it for sure, but right now, Riku Yanagisawa leading Colton Flash. They're in the 6th end. Yanagisawa leading 6-2, so that might be Team Schwaller's opponent in an all-international final, or will the local team, Team Flash, make a comeback in these last 3 ends? Well, you can join that stream via Curling Stadium on YouTube. And of course, the other game, Clancy Grandy also leading 6-2 over the Korean team skipped by Eunji Kim. So Tirinzoni may be looking at Clancy Grandy in the final. They've already met a couple times this season. Well, that final is coming up later this afternoon. It's 4 p.m. Saskatchewan time, 6 p.m. if you're working in the Eastern time zone. So please set your alarms. It's going to be a good one, the women's and men's final. Well, Matt, any final thoughts on this game?
No, other than I think regardless of who ends up winning that other game, I think we're in for a very good men's final and a very good women's final overall. Looking like we're going to have a rematch of last weekend's final at the Summer Series with Grandy joining Tirinzoni, but don't count Gim out. They have a couple rocks sitting around and plenty of experience themselves.
Well, Matt, on behalf of you, Mr. Probability himself, the entire Curling Stadium crew, James, Jerry, Rory McCusker. My name is Jason Chang. Join us in a little bit over an hour. We're going to have the finals here on Curling Stadium.
But also those companies that are involved with you.
We love being part of community events and community participation, everything from golf to hockey to curling to supporting teams like Team Flash. It's right in our wheelhouse. And it's allowed us to grow our company significantly, which for positive reasons means we've got to grow our plant as well. So we are going into a large expansion on our current site, and we will be expanding the brewery's capacity, almost doubling it, and at the same time increasing our efficiency. So we'll be using less water, less energy to make the same great beer.
Seventh end underway here. First stone thrown as the center guard, and looks like Yanagisawa going to try the tick here in the 7th end. Colton Flash
All
on the
right,
brush,
and
not
we're
able to
actually
get it
back here. Apologies
house,
for
but
the
it does hang
confusion.
on
We've
for a
actually
bite.
decided to jump over to the other men's semifinal here. We join in progress in the sixth end here. Team
Saving grace there
Riku
for Colton Flash. Of course, you need
Yanagasawa
to
with
steal
a
2
6-3
somewhere
lead,
along the way, and a little
facing off
biter like
against
that.
the home province team of Colton
It
Flash.
comes down to the end of the end, and perhaps you're sitting 3.
Colton Flash off to
A
an
little bit of a
undefeated
mistake might
weekend
get you your
so
chance for
far,
2.
but backs up against
For
the wall
now,
here, trying to earn their place in the men's final. And Riku Yanagasawa actually went 4-1 in the round robin, beating both Yannick Schwaller and Mike McEwen, who were the competitors in the other side of the semifinal. Of course, we just saw Yannick Schwaller come away with the win there, so don't count Team Yanagasawa out. If they make it in the final, they have experience beating Yannick Schwaller and definitely looking for an opportunity to start the season off with a win here.
Well, Matt, I want to hear the probabilities on this situation. 6-3 lead from Yanagasawa. They also have last stone advantage. This is the 7th end, so what do the stats say? Does Team Flash have a reasonable chance to come back?
Well, I think that depends on your definition of the word reasonable. We're looking at about, well, down 3 without with 2 ends to go. It's not a number that they want to hear me say out loud. It's around 0.1% at the highest men's level. So definitely backs up against the wall, but the reason it's not 0 is because it's probably happened at least once before. So we'll see how this ends up playing out.
Well, I hope you didn't scare the viewers away when you said 0.1%. Stick with us because this game actually a little bit closer than the other game, so probably a better chance for Flash than Team Gim right now on the women's side semifinal.
And Team Gim, of course, down 4, but they do actually have the hammer in the 6th end. It looks like they're actually just finishing up the 6th end of play. I'm just watching on my other screen here. Looks like at least 2 for Gim, maybe 3, but I don't think so. So I'm going to guess a 6-4 lead for them, for Clancy Grandy, excuse me, with the hammer with 2 ends to go. We'll wait for official scoring, and it just went up on the board. Yep, so Grandy holding a 6-4 lead with the hammer going into the 7th end on the women's side. So this end pretty much shaping up more or less wide open. Only there are 2 stones in the rings, 1 of each color, although Colton Flash one well off to the side, so I think if you're Riku, you're not necessarily worried about outdrawing that later. Looking for a double peel, but just pushes it through the hole, rolls the shooter out of the way, and excuse me, I didn't see the color of the rock at the top 12. It is another Colton Flash stone, so sitting 2 at the moment. I think you're probably going to see him guard for a while. Eventually, 2 stones sitting in the 12-foot is probably not enough to block Riku from just drawing in for a single point. So eventually they're going to have to make some kind of a tap to the 4-foot or draw. But for the moment, he's content with just throwing up a couple guards and hoping that Team Yanagasawa can't come up with a good double peel.
Well, the force really isn't a good option here, right, for Colton Flash here in the 7th end. If you force, you're down by 4 coming home.
No, I think it's basically steal or handshakes at this point. We've seen before with the 5-rock rule, 3s are certainly possible. Teams have gotten a lot better at defending against the 3, but it can happen from time to time. 4, though, just to tie it up, and then you have to steal the extra as well at that point. Is not what you're hoping for. So I think it's basically steal or bust at this point. Any score by Riku, I would not be surprised to see some handshakes.
And if I'm doing a little bit of math, I'm not the best at it, but with 2 ends left, you're down by 3. You need to at least steal a 2 at some point, right? A 2 and a 1 and another one, or a 1 and 2 and then another one. Because it's pretty tough to steal 3 points, I think, right?
Yeah,
That's the most reasonable combination that you could.
A steal of 3 is unheard of. The only time that usually happens is if both teams are willing to go for it and one team just doesn't do well. I mean, we just saw a steal of 5 on the Schwaller side, but that's because both teams were willing to keep rocks in the rings and it ends up happening. But when one team is up 3 like this, Team Yannick is not going to play ball. They're just going to continue to take rocks out. So a steal of 3 somewhere is just not a reasonable expectation. So, and even here with this setup, a steal of 2, I think, is asking for quite a bit. So you're probably looking at stealing 1 here, steal 2 in the 8 to try and force an extra, and then you try and steal the extra. Still, well, it's going to take a lot, but that's really the only reasonable path for Colton Flash here.
Yannick, I think he had a quick look at playing the double of the 2 rocks in the rings. That's a pretty long double. You can also just try to peel off the guard or run this guard in and get one of the ones in the house. This Japanese team, his third is Tsuyoshi Yamaguchi, second is Takaro Yamamoto, Satoshi Koizumi throwing the lead stones from Karuizawa, Japan. Pops it through between those 2 red stones.
Done that a couple times already, not quite been able to find a double peel. You're still not worried, but this is the chance Colton has been hoping for. He's going to try and draw one around this blue guard, preferably keep it about a rock or 2 higher than the T line. Not that you're going to see Riku try to follow him down. You're likely going to see him try and make a double off that stone top 12, but get one in there. If you ever get a miss, you might be able to sink another one, and that's probably the best that you can hope for if you're trying to steal 2 here.
You see Catlin Schneider, the third for Team Flash in the hack. Kevin Marsh, Dan Marsh, second and lead respectively. This is one of the few teams that stuck together, I believe, after the last quadrennial.
Yeah, one of few, if not maybe the only team more or less in the event that has the same lineup. And I think that's what's attributed so much to how well they've done in this event. Obviously, it seems like, and we just joined the game this end, so we haven't seen the entire play, but it seems like they maybe don't have their best play this afternoon, but went undefeated through the round robin, the only team on both sides to do so, and watching many of their games, they just dominated their opponents. So a little bit of a setback today, but I think it just comes down to that they're already well acquainted with each other. They're not going through all the motions of trying to learn about each other and how each other throws. They've already got that out of the way from their previous season where they represented Saskatchewan at the Briars. So now they can just focus on trying to hone their skills and be the best that they can, especially this early in the season. It'll help them a lot.
And even though my club team didn't make it to the Olympics, I've retained all my players from last season as well, both men's and mixed. So,
well, there you go. You're ready to go for your club championship then.
As long as they also signed up. I haven't fired them, but maybe they've left. And the one, this red guard into one of the, or this blue guard into one of the red stones, just clips it, but I'm not sure it's going to get it out. It's close.
It's either way, that's not really a rock that I think you're worried about if you're Riku, but at the same time, I'm sure you didn't come into this end expecting Flash to be sitting 4 around the rings. That would be maybe a bit of extra pressure if you got to make a draw here at the end.
I was thinking if Flash only had 2 rocks in the rings, Riku might even forego the draw and just play a hit, make sure you get one of them out and take a 2-point lead coming home. But if you're sitting 3, If you hit and roll out, you're giving up 2. But for the Japanese team, they did open up the front because that rock in the top 12 was also a bit dangerous. Colton could come around that later, so moving that to the side, whether it's in or not, is certainly still helping the Japanese team. They've got the draw to the button on the out-turn side wide open right now. Team Flash, they're trying to replace the guard here. Not looking for it to be in the rings, because if it's in the rings, the Japanese team would hit and stick around and be second shot. So leaving it up in front, if it was the last stone, they might try to get a rock into the top 12, a nibbler.
Yeah, I think they're content with this right now. It'll be interesting to see what Riku decides to do, depending on how confident he is in the draw. If it's been a while since he's thrown one, you could take the opportunity to try to draw or freeze now. It's not that enticing, but it would give you the opportunity to get draw weight underneath you. Other opportunities, of course, you could just try to peel the guard again, get one of the other side reds out. But you really shouldn't be worried about those rocks sitting around the rings, I don't think, so.
So have they just decided to straight peel here, Matt?
I think so. Just get rid of this stone. You have the opportunity, although it is very thin, you could get rid of one of the red rocks on the side. But I think just get rid of this one. You'll likely see Colton try and play the same draw to bite the top of the 12-foot, and then you'll have an open draw to the 4-foot to try and score your single point.
I think if you were trying to get one of the red stones out, either the one on the left or the right, playing the other turn would have made more sense. The angle would have been a bit more natural. So certainly content to just peel it off, knowing that you'll have a draw to the 4-foot on the out-turn side, the counterclockwise side. You think they'll play the same guard, or maybe try to put it into the top of the 12?
I think just you'd fighting. Like to. Yeah, I mean, the same guard is fine, but I think you'd like to just bite the 12-foot. Why not just sit 4 if you have the opportunity to? Riku's still got to draw the 4-foot, so you throw the same guard, that's fine. But at deepest, you'd like to just bite the 12-foot. Sit your 4th shot or 3rd. We don't know about that one stone. But it gives you the opportunity, if Yanagisawa ever happened to, miss the house entirely, it's just an extra point on the board. As long as you don't slip all the way in and give him a nose double or something like that, then you'll likely force him to draw.
So the tolerance is a guard. Throw a guard, let the sweepers give you the biter, and that's what they do.
Yeah, I think that does the job. Doesn't quite get as much curl as maybe he was hoping for. Might give Yanagisawa the opportunity to make a hit on this shot stone. Has to be very careful, though. If you ever just touch that rock that Colton just threw, you're sailing through, and it's a big score. big steal.
Yeah, and certainly even if you make contact with shot stone, you can't roll out, or else it's 2 as well, maybe even 3. We don't know exactly whether that red stone is just biting or the other red stone is just biting or not. Well, a bit of pressure here for Riku-san. Final stone, 7th end. He is up 6-3. Looking for a hit and stick to take one more. Gets one. You might see Team Flash shaking hands. Just gets by the guard. A little bit casual on the sweeping near the end. It got much closer than I thought it should have.
Yeah, they must have been very confident in that spot of the sheet, because early on it looked like it might have been curling.
So it is 7-3 right now. Team Flash having a talk, and they have decided to shake hands and call it a tournament. So Team Flash, losers in the semifinal, and Yannick Schwaller, the 5th seed coming in to this playoff round. They've rattled off a quarterfinal win earlier today against Steve Laycock, a local Saskatchewan team. Now they've knocked off another Saskatchewan team, Colton Flash, and they're on their way to an all-international final against Team Schwaller. Of course, that was our feature match earlier. Schwaller defeating Mike McEwen from Ontario now. But we didn't see the whole game. Well, Matt, we're going to have a now look at the final game on the women's side. Team Gim against Team Clancy Brandy. Unfortunate for Team Gim on how that last shot worked out. The shooter rolled out, took the other blue stone out as well, and Team Grandy now, they've got a open house. And I believe this is the final stone of the 7th end for Clancy Grandy.
It's a chance to take a 3-point lead here going into the final end. Oh, my apologies. We just came to this. This is not a draw for one. This is a draw for a couple. But did it slip through?
May have slipped through. If they had made it, I think handshakes would have been very quick. Yes. Team Grandy is up 4 after was up 6-4 after 6. So
looks like at least 2 points there. So definitely at least 8-4, and that'll be it. They decide to shake hands. So it'll be Clancy Grandy moving on to face Silvana Tiranzoni in the final of the women's event here in Martensville.
Grandy against Silvana Tiranzoni. The other final has Yannick Schwaller up against Schwaller. Those were scheduled to begin at 4 Saskatchewan time, 6 if you're in the Eastern time zone. Might have a little bit of a delay just because of when these games ended a little bit later than scheduled. So just have your streams up and running. We'll get to the live coverage when we start. Well, that brings us to the end of the semifinal coverage here at Martensville. Matt Hall, thanks for joining me once again. We'll see everybody in an hour, maybe just a little bit longer than that, for the finals of Curling Stadium Martensville International.